Simon & Schuster Audio presents On Power by Mark R. Levin, read by the author.
Dedication for my family, friends, and fellow Americans. Chapter 1, On Power. Many have written about and debated the issue of power, including the ancients and modern philosophers, scholars, and statesmen alike. Why? Because power determines your social arrangements, quality of life, and more to the point of this book, whether you are free or enslaved or some degree of either. In short, it determines your personal fate, the fate of your community, and the fate of a nation. There are infinite ways to view power, innumerable contexts and circumstances in which to apply it. There's truly no simple, concise, all-purpose definition for what is meant by power. Clearly, however, it is more than a mere word. To spend time thinking, talking, or writing about it is not a mere abstraction, a useless amorphism, or an elitist esotericism. Power is a term meant to describe some kind of force or energy that surrounds us all the time, is both ubiquitous in your life and the life of the entire society, and is consequential in every way. Power is a core reality and characteristic of human existence. Yet without more to go on, such as context and circumstance, it can be ambiguous and elusive. In all human pursuits, including personal pursuits and life events, power matters. At a macro level, power shapes economies, politics, and governments. Moreover, there are many variations: implied powers, necessary powers, assumed powers, granted powers, defined powers, limited powers, divided powers, ambiguous powers, seized powers, illegitimate powers, and more. For most people, these are unstated and often unnoticed or obscure kinds of power. But they exist and matter. Indeed, power is inextricably linked to liberty, although it's not to be confused with liberty itself. Power determines if there's too much liberty, for example, anarchy, or too little, for example, tyranny, depending on how power is exercised, who exercises it, and if it is bound by human rights. The American Revolution is an important and obvious example of power properly pursued and exercised, the point of which was to promote individual and societal liberty, including by means of representative, limited, divided government, that is, ordered liberty. Conversely, autocrats of every stripe, and in all ages, have exploited liberty to empower themselves at the expense of the liberty of others. In fact, one's use of liberty this way, to expand one's own power to diminish, if not denude, the liberty of others, is, in a real sense, a paradox. And it is a cancer that apparently metastasizes over time within democracies. Of course, there are democracies that have lasted several centuries, but in the end, they have all succumbed to the steady increase in the centralization of power and a decline in individual and societal liberty. Sadly, this appears to be the nature of things. To be clear, then, even the most wisely conceived nation-states, mindful of man's abuse of power and established with the intent of curbing and restraining that power, seem to fail in the end. Gone are Athens, Rome, and numerous lesser societies. Democracies struggle against the centralization of power almost from the moment they are established. History is replete with examples of tyrants grabbing power in the name of liberty. A prime example exists in Marxist regimes, where liberation through revolution, class warfare, where the masses, the oppressed, are said to revolt against the powerful few, the oppressors, and the promise of liberty through community and collectivism results in hellish, genocidal police states, ruling over the people in their name, but without their consent and with an iron fist. Again, this is not only a phenomenon of tyrannies. As I noted on the back cover of my book, Liberty and Tyranny, in our own country, President Abraham Lincoln observed that slave owners
Sample complete. Ready to continue?